Okay, I think I'm going to start now. So, hi everyone. I'm Kritika from Connect4 with my colleague Aarti. At the outset, honestly, we just like to thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts for all the resilience, perseverance, and passion that each one of you have displayed towards ensuring the safety and the welfare of your students as well as their families. Your work and your ways of innovating and shifting gears during these unprecedented times is actually like an inspiration to all of us who think that y'all are the true change makers in our society. We also really glad that we could help you optimize the full use of Connect4's virtual volunteering services to have capacity building as well as weekend group volunteering activities done while everyone works from home. For those of you who have not partnered with Connect4, Connect4 is an online volunteering platform where we match and connect volunteers with not-for-profits to fulfill the various requirements that these not-for-profits might have. While the concept of monetary donation is very well established in India, we focus on empowering people to donate their time and their skill towards a cause and towards a particular not-for-profit. We've partnered with over 350 NGOs and have about 23,000 volunteers on our platform, and we operate across India in major cities in India. And our services are free of cost and we have a very simple registration process. If you all are interested in signing up with Connect4, the registration form link will be shared with you in the chat box. Today we have a wonderful panel of speakers. We've got Sushri from Udaan, Bansi and Akshay from Muqam, and Sinayana from Makala Jagriti. They all are educators and teachers in the not-for-profit space. Sushri, if you would like to start with a small introduction about yourself as well as Udaan India Foundation, and then Bansi and Akshay and Sunana can go.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Like Kritika said, thank you to all of you for making sure that learning of children continues. I'm Sushri. I work with Udaan. We are a 16-year-old non-for-profit organization, and we work in the suburbs of Mumbai, that is Powai and communities around it. And we work with children and youth from low-income communities and empower them through education. The Udaan journey starts at the age of 4 and goes all the way till they are 21. The aim is to change the socio-economic status of children and youth who work. Yes, that's what we do. Thanks, Kritika.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Sushri. Bansi, would you like to go next?
Bansi, you're on mute.
Hi everyone, am I audible? As usual, the first thing that goes, I think, with these webinars. Great, it's so nice to be here. Thank you, Kritika, Aarti, Connect4 for having us here, and everyone for coming to hear what we have to share with you all. My name is Bansi. I'm from Muqam. Our organization is now in its 20th year. We've worked with street children. That's where our journey began. And we've even slowly moved towards slum dwelling children as well as children from lower economic backgrounds who are associated with government schools. We actually basically believe in pledging an equal world, which is equal opportunities that can be provided, or as many as can be provided to those kids as well. Because we believe very strongly that if they had an opportunity, there are chances that they would do much, much better than where they are today. So that's the whole idea. We don't really follow school curriculum, but we look at everything that will help them learn better in school and make them more independent later. So similar to what Sushi said, we are in a way similar. We start as young as 3, where they're in their pre-primary age. And we go on all the way till they do even corporate internships with us and finish, college. So, yeah, that's the kind of thing that we do. I'll let Akshay take over from here. Akshay is one of our main teachers with the organization. So, Akshay.
Hi, everyone. I've been with Muqam for over 6 years now. I started off simply as a volunteer with them, And but as time passed, we were like a perfect match for each other, made for each other, Muqam and me. So I got absorbed by the organization, and over the years, I've played the role of a teacher, a facilitator, been a part of almost all the programs, and it's been a fun journey with the students. Yeah, great experience teaching and learning at the same time. Thank you.
Thanks, Akshay. So, Nanya, would you like to come in here and talk a little about yourself and Makala Jagrati and the great work you all do?
Yeah, thanks so much, Kritika, for having me here. And it's wonderful to share this platform with organizations like Udan and Muqam, who doing such great work. So Makala Jagrati is a Bangalore-based organization. We work with children and youth, very similar to what both of them share. We just turned 17 yesterday. It was our 17th anniversary. We work with Anganwadis, we work with government schools, and we work with youth. These are the different spaces we work, but across all programs, our focus is on the holistic development of children, where we look at their creative development, their social, emotional development, their physical development, and all aspects, be it the Anganwadi child or the school child or the youth. We're looking at how we can really support them or facilitate them to unleash their own potential. And I think all three organizations have very, very similar thinking. So I'm happy that we're sharing the space together.
Absolutely. I'm sure there'll be so many common denominators out here to share with like the audience and the participants. So before we start, I'd like to do a little bit of context setting to understand the on-ground reality that most of y'all face in terms of, this creation of a digital school, the ways y'all have leveraged technology to pivot to suit the needs of the current situation. So Nanya, if you would like to start.
Yeah. Just let me know if my audio is clear because my bandwidth is a bit low. Is it okay?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. Yeah, so Makala Jagrati, like I shared, works mostly with Anganwadis, work with government schools and children from the urban slums. And what we had to do immediately when COVID, the lockdown and all happened with children not going to school is we had to ensure that children continue to be engaged, right? Not so much worry about the learning outcomes or the gaps or the syllabus complete karna hai, but more, our children meaningfully engaged on a daily basis. And, how can we do that? So 2-3 things that came in, and I'm sure most organizations are thinking the same way and started working the same way, is one, how can we start leveraging technology? The second one is how can we start involving parents in the whole conversation? Because although they were involved earlier, now they become the most important, stakeholders in the child's learning. And the third thing was how do we support the teachers who are, whether this government school teachers or the Anganwadi worker, both became the COVID frontline warriors, so to say, right? So, but to pay attention to the child's learning, they needed some support in terms of resources, etc. So to quickly share what we are doing is really a combination of online and offline methods because of the existing and real digital divide that is there. Not every child we're able to reach through digital means. So we have 3 different approaches. One is we've leveraged YouTube, WhatsApp, mainly WhatsApp groups to reach out to the children. We are really not able to use Google Meet or Zoom and all of that. But using, creating short bites of videos on what activities can be done, sending it on WhatsApp groups, sending worksheets on WhatsApp groups. That is one aspect. Wherever we knew that the digital divide is really huge and children don't have access to the smartphones, we've ensured they got some physical learning kits, which they can use at home. And the third thing we started doing is actually visiting them, in the communities through community visits. But I think for today's conversation, the first bit which we did is using technology really is the one, that I'll talk about more. in the coming, in the session. But yeah, I think there is no escaping from technology. It's only going to grow. Access is only going to improve and not decrease going forward. It's just about how we can make best of what we have. So before this, Makla Jagriti really did not use much technology, did not leverage all these mediums. But I think this has really thrown us that opportunity, and I'm very happy to share that because we've been using technology, we've been able to scale our programs. Where we used to work with 200 Anganwadis, we are sending the same content to 66,000 Anganwadis. That is, we have a statewide partnership now, and that's because of the use of technology, right? And similarly, we work with children's homes, where we used to work with 2 homes. Now we are sending the same content to 1,300 homes. So that is the power of technology, of being open to change. So that's the context I'd like to share of what Makla Jagriti is doing. Yeah.
Absolutely. So something good has come out of COVID. It's made us strategize and actually adopt technology and use it to our advantage, for sure. So Sushri, have you had a similar experience with Udaan India Foundation in terms of leveraging technology and re-strategizing programs for online study?
So Kritika, one of the things in May definitely was that we realized there's this huge digital divide that exists, and we were just not able to contact or connect with our majority of our students who were there. And I feel very proud and happy to share that we collaborated with Connect4 to address this problem together, and we raised funds, and we have given 135 plus phones and 80 plus tabs to our teachers and our students. And today we are connected with 600 plus children and 200 plus youth with which we are working. So our children's program is basically divided into in-school intervention, where we work with the PMC school, the entire pre-primary and grade 1 and grade 2. And we have an after-school program. We work from grade 1 to grade 10. So I feel happy to share that our virtual learning has stabilized right now with all the students who have been connected with us, thanks to Connect4 for sure. With our youth as well, like Sunanya said, the COVID has actually accelerated adoption of technology, something that we would have probably done 6-7 years down the line. We are doing it now because we are in the middle of this crisis. So with youth also, it has only been optimistic and good because we've been able to sort of get a lot of expert speakers for our youth, senior management, who otherwise would be so time pressed that they could not physically sort of come to the centers. But now that access has increased considerably. We are also running computer literacy programs, spoken English programs, mentoring and coding, and all of these programs online. And so yeah, this is how it is. We are able to engage 1,000 plus children and youth currently, and we started out optimistically, and it is still on an optimistic note, I think.
Fabulous. It's so good to hear the kind of work that you all are doing. Bansi, would you like to add anything to this as well with what your experiences at Muqam?
Yeah, sure. I think down the line in 6 months, we're pretty much on the same page, all the organizations where we've started using or maximizing. I think WhatsApp has been the savior for all of us, because we have kids who come from Udaan Foundation did. Even we collected a lot of phones and tabs and distributed the devices for the children to use. Yeah, one of the troubles was also that we were teaching them that during COVID, you shouldn't even visit your neighbor. Anyway, they stay in really close proximity. So that was again something that we faced the challenge with, where it wasn't like I'll give one device and 3 or 4 families can share it. It was okay for 4 or 5 siblings in the house to share it, but not 2-3 families, which otherwise would be very easy because the kids are around the same age and they can easily share. So which required us to also come up with a lot more devices to reach out to more people. So many kids moving away from, from the city and going away to their villages with the economy, dropping and the income issues that our parents were facing. Having said that, we collected quite a few devices. We, reached out to as many students as we could. We have managed, I think one of the biggest issues, like they said, is using anything online constantly is difficult, because not just the fact that devices, but even after giving devices, the network, the amount of data, even in the devices, this amount of storage that the children have, all these things are such challenges that we face every day. So even if so online becomes very difficult, we've still managed to do, like, at least once or twice a week, we do online Zoom classes with the children. I think it was a great need to even educate the children on how to use this technology, especially the younger ones, because we had to not just train the child, but even the parent. Like the kids who are over, like fifth grade can pretty much could sign in and manage by giving instructions. It's the younger ones that really needed support. Yeah, we're pretty much otherwise on the same role, where, teachers needed to pull their socks up and, put together a lot of resources. We were on a overdrive in trying to make all our material and resources online, because only if we had that would we be able to reach out to the children. And also a lot of curriculum changes, like what both these organizations are saying was, so because these kids do not have those kind of resources, we've all built room resources which we used to use at our centers. It's only when it went online that we realized that big gap that we had. Like luckily we still had some, but there's this huge gap of where now we have to transfer everything to online. I think down the line in 6 months we are doing a great job. We have a lot of kids working with us very regularly. We've also managed to tie up with a lot of other organizations and homes where we send out stuff. Another thing that we included was peer learning, wherein we collaborated with different schools in South Mumbai, and they would come and take small sessions, 1 to 2 hour sessions. Some more sequence of sessions with the kids. And that way they didn't have to get stuck with just getting videos or, worksheets from the teachers, but also a little bit of interaction even amongst their age group or a little older kids, some sort of school kind of feeling. You're seeing children around rather than just teachers constantly contacting you all. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Wow. So you all have talked a lot about the challenges that your students face, and I think the narrative has largely been around the challenges faced by students, how education has come to a complete halt in some cases, but we rarely talk about the challenges that teachers face. Of course that the challenges that your students face automatically become your challenges. But if we had to just focus on the challenges of the teachers, would you all say that there are any? So Nanya, would you like to answer this question?
Yeah, where do we start? Is what I was thinking. See, I think Bansi has very nicely shared the challenges which the children are facing, but those are also the challenges of the teachers, right? If my children do not have access to a phone, or they do not have enough data, or as simple as there's a phone at home, but it's going with my dad for work, and the access of the child to the phone is very, very less time. So that is, so we really need to look at this in, I think, two different segments, right? One is the group which doesn't have access at all, where we're not able to do any online classes, where we probably just send some content in the mornings and the children just do it, and they share it back in the evening. That is one model we are facing. So in that, the challenge faced by teachers, I'd like to say, is one is there is no personal connect with the children. So you're really not able to gauge, is the child really enjoying it, is he understanding it, is she really doing what she's supposed to do. That is one kind of challenge. There's very less time of interaction compared to before, where the student would be in the school throughout the day. For teachers in other schools which I have seen, which are the slightly more privileged schools, it's just classroom management. Like teachers itself adopting to technology is a big burden, is a big hurdle, rather, because not all teachers were already used to, technology from earlier times. So even managing a Google Meet, naughty children doing different things, paying attention to what each child is doing. Like you can hear people who hear our parents would know what their child is going through attending these classes, right? So getting that grip or hold of the classroom itself is a different challenge for those who are doing the online classes, and it's also scary. I think we should also acknowledge, for those of you who are teachers here, my mother-in-law is a teacher. She teaches 12th grade students, but she is so nervous every time she has to shoot a video or she has to do a class online, because that is not her comfort zone. Classroom and a board and children here, she enjoys it, but talking to a computer or shooting a video and sending it, it's really, really difficult. And I really appreciate every teacher who's making efforts to do that. I think these are some of the really high level challenges, but I think we cannot do away with the challenges of the children or the parents, because those become the challenge of the teacher at the end of the day. So all this together makes it, especially for children teaching, teachers dealing with the not so privileged communities, I think it's really very, very difficult thing. And especially we've also had cases where parents are saying, how can I spend money for data? I don't have money for, just bringing food on the plate. And people who are working at scale cannot also ensure that you're doing data recharges or, providing devices, etc. So that is a real challenge. Yeah.
I feel more empathetic now because you've rounded up the challenges really beautifully, and definitely children can be a very unforgiving lot, and they're a tough crowd to please sometimes when it comes to like content that you have to create for them and to keep them engaged and to make sure that you are playing the role of a disciplinarian at the same time. It's a lot to do. Sushi, would you like to add to any of the challenges shared by Sananya?
So definitely one of the things that she said, I would agree, is that teachers have suddenly been made to go from technophobia to technophilia. It's not just adopting technology, but you have to love it, you have to innovate, you have to experiment, and that is a lot to do for it. And I'm sure a lot of them have risen to the occasion. There's one more thing. With increased access to learning, students also have unlimited access to their teachers right now. Earlier there were hard boundaries. I'm going to see my teacher between 9 to 10, and then I'm going to do my own stuff. But right now, teacher is available on phone. She's available on WhatsApp. So I'll send her good morning, good evening. So the boundaries are also sort of blur. And I'm not saying some of our teachers do enjoy it, but some do feel that the boundaries are little sort of blurred. There is, of course, isolation. There is multitasking, because I'm a teacher, I'm a mother, I might have 3 children at my home, and then I have 30 children calling me or messaging me or saying, you didn't say good to me, you didn't send thumbs up to me, and things like that. So those are things that are there. Lack of interaction, of course, and privacy. I think, teachers are sort of getting out of their comfort zone, and for the little ones, they might come out of their inhibitions and record a video that they send. And sometimes we see, I don't think our parents are also new to this. I don't think privacy is something that they understand. So unintentionally, the video sort of gets circulated, which they are comfortable with their class, right? They have always been the way they are with their class of 30, and suddenly there are all these people who are looking at the video, and it makes them very uncomfortable. So these are a few points that I think I would like to sort of add on and say, I really kudos to all the teachers really handling all of this together, handling it with a smile, handling it with resilience. And if India has not stopped learning today, I think it's because of our teachers and their resilience.
Absolutely. We need like to do a standing ovation here to all the teachers. I don't know how it's possible on Zoom, but yeah, definitely. Akshay, is there anything else you would like to add to these points, to any of the challenges that you faced during this time?
Yes, sure, Kritika. So basically, the lockdown forced all of us, all the teachers here at Muqam also to adapt to, how to take teaching off the blackboard and bring it on screens, and at the same time make it effective. Make the learning process for the students effective. So Sunanya very clearly pointed out how to give that personal attention even when you are doing it online, even when you are doing virtual learning. So at Muqam, some of the teachers here were a bit tech savvy and some were comparatively not. So the ones who were tech savvy, they kind of played a team player role and they took up more responsibilities. And for the teachers who weren't that tech savvy, we had to come up with computer training curriculum. So we actually had to train them as to how to use some of the basic programs, some of the basic software tools, so that they could go ahead with the teaching and do it independently with the students. So like basic, Microsoft Word, basic Microsoft Office tools, learning to use Google Drive, learning to use Zoom. Those were the things that came up with what the teachers were struggling actually. So the teachers who were tech savvy, they had to step up and, help and train those teachers to start doing their activities online with the students. And very fascinating, like initially everyone was a bit nervous, initially everyone was a bit thrown off with the whole setup. But as time progressed, the teachers who weren't tech savvy, they learned things and they were really fascinated by what they learned. They were, surprised and they were having wow moments. Oh, I can do this now with this software. Oh, I can do this now with this tool. I never knew this was possible with this particular feature of the program. So they were fascinated, they were learning, and they were then coming up with their ideas and learning to implement them with whatever knowledge they had using those software programs. So yeah, that has been the major challenge, training the teachers so that they can deliver their learning and their teaching effectively to the students. And another realization in the process that we have had is that it's kind of become a resume requirement. It's kind of like you need to have that skill on your resume, that you are proficient, you are a bit competent in using IT programs, you are competent enough in using technology. Now it's kind of, this lockdown has made us realize that every teacher that we hire has to have those basic minimum IT skills, because there might be some special software tools that we use with our organization. So we might need you to have some basic knowledge, some fundamental knowledge, no matter how experienced you are. You might be 50-year-old, you might have worked with big organizations for 20 years, but if you have zero knowledge of using the computer, it might be a bit of a deterrent in hiring you. We might not really be that keen on hiring someone with zero IT skills. We would prefer somebody who would have basic IT skills and we could build on that. So that was one of the things that emerged for us.
Correct. So my next question now is actually an extension and ties into what you've just mentioned. So in addition to upskilling and mastering these various educational softwares and tools, what else should be the wider vision that educators need to have for their personal learning journey, which would obviously also translate into the learning journey of the students? Sunanya, would you like to answer this?
Yeah, I think I echo what Akshay was sharing about how teachers started finding the small joys in all these things. I echo most of the things he said. I've noticed in our teams, especially, and also in the government school teachers, and it was really nice to see them grow from figuring out Google Sheets to even making the videos. So my team and even the school teachers, they make videos, upload them on YouTube and share it, etc. So I think the larger vision, what teachers should have or will start having, I see, is accepting and embracing technology more and more. Technology is here to stay, and they're also discovering the power of it. Like more and more we probably see that there would be a blend of, using both the traditional means and using technology more. We used to, in fact, earlier give teachers these technology, teach kit, which is like a projector, a tab, etc., to use in the classroom. But there was so much resistance because they did not appreciate it so much. But I see it now that when they go back to the classrooms, they'll know that, hey, I can use this. I can, you show this video and explain it to them so much better. Or, hey, those children miss the class, so why don't I just share a video to them later on? Or about engaging with parents more using technology, because until now, parental engagement was more the PTM, which happened once a month or so, and it was very limited to your child is this, your child is that. But now the parents are more invested in learning, and technology will, already parents' WhatsApp groups are created everywhere, so teacher can be more in touch for the nicer things, for appreciating, for learning to happen. And I think teachers have, especially the teachers working, who are not having this exposure before, have now got exposure to so much content in this world. They're able to, see, because they now have the ability to search on their own, to figure out what are the different videos available, what are the images available, what are the worksheets available. So suddenly their mind has opened up to the internet and the possibilities, which was always there, but this situation kind of forced them to do it. So I think becoming the teachers of this, truly becoming teachers of this 21st century is what will happen, where every teacher, irrespective of the background or exposure, will now, start having using technology, be it the smartphone, be it using the internet, be it using computers, as a very integral part of their teaching as they go forward, and it won't get limited to this unfortunate time that we are in.
Of course, and I think a direct result of that would be like an improvement in the quality of education as well. When you have so many resources, images, videos being shared, it definitely helps the student in assimilating all this kind of information, breaking it down and understanding, I think, the lesson, essentially.
Yeah, it will also, I think, normalize teaching. Like, you have different kinds of teachers, but if teachers start having access to the same resources, like you said, definitely, the quality of education can go a notch higher. Yeah, that's true.
Bansi, would you like to share ways in which you feel this could improve, like the personal learning journey of a teacher?
Sure. So I think one of the first things that the teacher needs to do is accept and break out of their own conventions. So I think that is also, I still believe that teachers have coped beautifully in accepting all of the, all of the technology and everything. But even today, if you speak to most teachers, they'll be like, now when will this get over? I can't wait to go back to classroom. And it's not just about missing faces. Of course, that's like a huge part of it. But it's also about, like being able to go back to the comfort, being able to go back to those resources, being able to take feedback as the physical class goes on. So I think at least for us, what we focus on and this thing is that leave behind what the convention was, leave behind what your actual curriculum was, be open to changing the curriculum. I'm not saying we do away with what we had, but kind of build along that, be open to the bigger changes and rebuild a sort of curriculum which will now fit in with the fact that you're not going to be face-to-face constantly. So because, like for children, they are still curious. They are not going to lose their curiosity. They are not going to have lesser questions. All that is still there. You're teaching how to do that and how to manage that with the amount of access they have, because we see two kinds. We see children who kind of give up because there's just too much and it's overwhelming because there's so much available on the phone. And then we also see children who are overexcited, and then you have no control over what kind of data they reach or what kind of resources is, actually accessible to that. So for the teacher to be able to balance that sort of curiosity they have to break out of a lot of their comfort zone, a lot of integrating a lot of creative ideas to make sure that they have their output in a way that I think one of the biggest thing is working with a lot of feedback, and being connected to the kids constantly is, I think, one of the ways that their own vision, their own learning can translate into, So I think for teachers, beyond just technology learning, it's a very big mind shift. And if they manage that mind shift, I think half the problems will be taken care of over there.
Yeah, I think we all have to do a lot of unlearning when it comes to technology and ways to like re-strategize the way we function. So you all have talked a lot about like the content available, resources available, tools available online. But let's say in the absence of resources and educational toys, as in like right in front, the physical presence of them, what are the ways in which available resources can be utilized to affect greater change? Sushri, would you please answer this?
So Kritika, there I think resources are all around us. They always have been. I mean, I cannot think of any topic, and I would like to hear if someone disagrees. Whether it's maths, whether it's science, you're teaching magnetism, you can get a battery, you can get a wire, you're teaching fractions, you can take things around you. You want to teach water science.
Sushri, there's a problem with your audio.
Is it better now?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so I was saying that resources are all around us, and any topic that you choose across any of the subjects, so whether it's, maths or science or English, you can find material all around you. I can give you an example of what we do at Udan. We have collaborated with Pratham, and they have this Corona Thodi Masti and Corona Thodi Padhai. And they send out material thrice in a week, and there is no fancy material that you have to use there. It's using simple things around you. You can do science experiments, you can observe the trees around you, you can observe the birds around you, you can observe the animals around you, take waste material that's available in the house and do that. So these are few things. And another thing, I think parents, grandparents, all the chatas, mommies, everyone who's there in the house are the biggest resource to turn back to. There is so much to learn from them. Have a conversation with them, which you would have never done otherwise, because it's not part of your homework, because they are busy, but now everyone is in one house. So there's so much to learn. How was this community 20 years back? How did you handle challenges? And there's so much to learn from them. So I think your family, in some sense, also becomes your resource there. So I would actually say maybe this is the perfect time to innovate and experiment and break away from the notion that you need educational resources to be able to communicate learning. Learning is much more than that. And of course, there are online resources where learners who learn through visualization, there's very high quality content that's available, and you can have access to that for sure. So this is what I think I would say on resources. Use things around you, use people around you to learn.
Sounds very exciting actually when you think about it. Banti, would you like to share your thoughts on this?
Yeah, most definitely. So I totally agree with Sushri that the family became one big point of resource, and also the fact that I agree with the fact that anything and everything that you see around you in the house is pretty much something that you can use to teach something. I think two things that happened was, one was that we could not expect any students or families to buy and give them anything from the outside. Not even simple things like I could not ask my parents to go and buy an extra notebook or crayons for that much time. It became a real issue in terms of getting them even the basic things. And it wasn't even fair for us to ask them to get those things, because it was just, and we didn't have access to them to even provide it or send it across, at least in the beginning. I think that was one of the biggest things. And secondly, to be honest, I think the children who learned or who have a preference or edge of learning in audiovisual did brilliantly with all the internet facilities and resources that were available. It's the ones who are the practical learners, the kinesthetic learners, who got hit really badly. And then we realized that we needed to do a rotation of activities so that even the ones who are very comfortable with just this kind of resources don't give up on activities like physical activities. So we put in a day where we made sure that that was the day you either do yoga or dance or some sort of physical activity once a week. And so that kind of thing made sure that they have different kind of activities. We added in a day which was just art and craft, like assigned days to some of these things. We tied up with a thing which is called Curious Time, which is our online e-newspaper. I am happy to put any of y'all through it if y'all wish. And I think it's done brilliantly for our kids because they are a child-friendly newsletter. They put together a news that is, appropriate age-wise, because even their news they've divided into age groups, and they send that across to us every single day, and we make sure that we use some of it with our children. So that also made it easy because they are more up to date, because even the regular newspapers stop reaching their houses. So anything that's happening in the day to day, they're not as aware of. Or all they're hearing about is, coronavirus or drugs or Sushant Singh Rajput. That's all that's going on media. And they lose out on those, interesting facts about something that NASA did, so all of that kind of helped. Another thing that we did is try and use material from within the house, which doesn't take away from its usability in the house. So, for example, we all have sand trays, or all have these sand paper materials that are made. Especially for younger kids, where they use them to learn letter writing. We ask them to take like a plate. They all have plates in the house. They all have grains in the house. We told them take grains, fill up the whole thing, and this is how you will trace the letter on the plate. And after that, they could just wash the grain and give it back, and it could be used in the house again. So we're not only talking about using it once for the child and getting rid, but actually trying to reuse the material that they have. We did not give too many outdoor activities. So even our dances and everything was like, tell us something that can happen in like one square box so that they can manage to fit it in the compact spaces. So we did a lot of, so even like we put a lot of focus even in our regular classes on life skills. So we got a chance to, instead of getting them the trays which teach them buttoning or getting them toys which taught them lacing, we made them do it on their own shoes, on their own shirts, and we could grade it by levels, like first do it on the shirt in front of you, then wear it on yourself. So those kind of things, I think, put together kind of accelerated. So we also accepted that this could be a good time to upgrade their values, upgrade their life skills, rather than just trying and focusing on making sure that they learned their subjects. And I think that's done us pretty well. And that way the activities are also very engaging. The kids are feeling like they're doing something, and which keeps them more active rather than just sitting with like one more worksheet and one more video and all of that. So that kind of thing helped.
I definitely think that the kind of model that Sushri and you have adopted is absolutely ingenious, and I wonder if like private schools would also be using this at all. But I'm sure they rely more on technology and actual educational tools and like resources and all. But Sunayanya, since you work with government schools, is it any different there?
No, I think I completely, I was just typing in the chat that, agree with both of them. And you really don't need fancy resources or anything to, for learning to happen. Children can learn from their surroundings. You just need to sort of facilitate that. So if you look at, I have a short 1-minute video of children's activities. Can I just show that?
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone would be interested in this.
Yeah, just a moment.
Bansi, could you please share the name of the newsletter you mentioned?
Can you see, Kritika?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is there audio in this though?
Yeah. I'll just stop it there. But I thought that would, really give an idea of how parents can just engage children at home, which is the resources. It could be the bartan, it could be waste at home, it could be vegetables, it could be fruits. These were, of course, the Anganwadi children, but similar stuff. We give a lot of projects to the older children. Find out what is your, budget of your household in 1 week, how much money is spent, or what is it spent, where can you cut down the money, or figure out some issue in the community and see what you can do about it. Small things, somebody's throwing kachra here, or so many things like that. And it's wonderful. Children coming up with their own creativity and learning, and parents are saying that I'm learning more now from my child, because parents are so involved in the learning process now, and there are a lot of parents who are not really literate, but they love to learn, right? And all this, especially for the younger children, you don't even need them to be literate. Parents can teach them so much. So, yeah, I echo with everything Bansi and Sushil would talk more on this.
Lovely. Yeah, I think they using these bartans and the vessels and utensils at home is kind of reverting to older traditions, because that's how most of us, I'm sure, grew up as well. Just playing in the kitchen while our parents were cooking. We've all been there, and it's been a lot of fun doing that for sure. So yeah, I know that you mentioned that learning outcomes wasn't as important at the start, but I know that a lot of y'all still do assessments with like the older kids. So I just wanted to know, what are the best practices for assessing students? And Akshay, if you could just start with that.
Yeah, so basically one of the things that we are doing at Muqam is continuous self-assessment by the students themselves. So every day we send out homework, and then later, once the students submit their homework, the answer sheets can be provided to the students. Like, they're provided with the answers. So that is what we did. The students can check their own answers, they figure out their own mistakes. That way, this especially works very well for the older students. And for the younger students also, the parents can sit with them and help them in doing this. So many mistakes the students could understand on their own, but anytime the students felt that they did not understand a particular question's answer, they could always connect with us over a call or a WhatsApp chat or anything like that. So one thing that worked very well for us was continuous self-assessment by the students themselves, and they getting to know their own learning curve, their own learning progress on a day-to-day basis. Apart from that, we have been regularly doing video conferencing where we do oral assessments with them, we play quizzes with them, we do games with them, And we have kind of, made it a point that once every 2 weeks, we would do a quick recap of a concept, of a grammar concept which has been learned, and do it in the form of a questionnaire or do it in the form of a game, so that students can really engage in that session, which is very, very crucial. Because it's important to make learning fun. Otherwise, the student would not feel like coming back to your session. He would, because he has a lot of things happening around him in the house. If you want the student to come back and stick to that session, so it's important to make it fun. So incorporating a lot of games, incorporating a lot of quizzes, sticking to objective kind of questions was another thing that we learned. Like objective questions were working really, really well. And one more thing that we started doing was that testing students on their creative abilities and doing more of application-based questions rather than sticking to assessments which were based mostly out of the textbook, because the students have the textbook material always with them, so they would never hesitate to go back and fall back on those answers. But if you give them some out-of-the-box question or something where they really have to think about the concept, that they have to apply the concept that they have learned, that is real assessment which can happen now. This is the best time to really do that. So that is what we have been implementing.
Absolutely. Sushri, are you all doing anything differently at Udaan India Foundation from what Akshay just mentioned?
So a few things. I think one is important to set out the success metric. Like what is it that you want to assess? So we decided, like we chalked out learning outcomes for each class, and we've done it in a way which is realistic, sustainable, and sort of can be transacted with the students. So that's the first thing that we did. The second thing we did is, one is learning outcomes and assessing that. The second very important component right now is the socio-emotional learning part of it, which is absolutely critical, and it's the foundation of a child's learning. If you're not at peace, if you are not happy, if you don't enjoy online learning, there's no point assessing learning outcome. So we assess the socio-emotional well-being of the children through questionnaires, by sending forms, Google forms to the students in the higher grades. And the little ones, the teacher actually personally makes calls to all the students. So we select a decent sample size to make sure that we have an idea of that. We do use assessments for feedback. For secondary students, we use Google form because it's simple, it's scalable, it's sustainable. We have trained our teachers on that. So to give you an example, if it's a 15 marks question, then there would be 3 questions on 1 learning outcome. So Google form automatically gives you analysis of how the students are doing across each learning outcome. So the next month, the teacher makes sure that whichever learning outcomes the students didn't perform well on, especially because it's a virtual medium, she kind of focuses on that through other means where she can ensure that, that is being done. In terms of formative assessment, like Akshay said, yes, questionnaires, quizzes, on in-phone conversations with them, little things like, summarize the concept for me in 12 words. So things like these, which they can use with the students to understand. The little ones send voice notes to say what is it that they learned, what it is that they understood, because they don't know how to write yet. So voice notes is an excellent formative assessment for the younger ones. For the older ones, of course, Google Form has worked really well for us. In fact, it's given us much more data than a question paper would sort of ever give to us, and we've been able to structure the assessments better. So these are few things that we do. Of course, when they have Zoom classes, the teachers have an entry question that, okay, I gave you some pre-read over this topic, and here are the 6 questions you need to answer. So those are some ways in which synchronous learning, the teacher does the formative assessment. For summative, we use Google Forms, and it works really well, and it's simple enough for anybody to sort of use it. And the students also directly know which questions they have answered correctly and which ones they haven't, and they also come to know what is the mistake there. So they are enjoying that they have the power back in their hands, and they don't have to wait for the teacher to correct the paper and get back to them a week later. So I think that works well. That's what we are doing.
fabulous. These kids are very lucky. It's like a completely different model, but they seem to be very happy with it. Bansi, my last final question is for you. So, could you tell us the ways in which one can make learning and teaching even more collaborative, although it is distance learning and through distance learning?
Sure. So basically, I think we've pretty much covered most of it in what we've been speaking. But collaborative learning and speaking, learning and teaching basically is managing all of it together in a group where you're managing so many children together, teachers. So one thing that we've been doing is putting more than one teacher on each class. It kind of helps the teacher also get support as well, whether it is a younger class or an older class. We made sure with the younger class there are like 3 teachers or something. With the older classes there are two teachers. It kind of helps the teachers support each other as well as manage the children a little better. It helps, like not every teacher is equipped to do every single part. So they are also teaching each other. They are also teaching the children. They are also one of the biggest things that we use, that we fall back on constantly, is a very, very strong system of feedback. We have a everyday system of feedback. Like Akshay said, that we have a thing where they do their self-assessment, but when they send across things, we make sure that an assessment per child is written down every day, and that's possible only when there is like a group, like a few teachers working on the same class. Because the other thing that I think most of us miss is the regular input and support from volunteers. Even though we have had volunteers who are doing things, on online with us, another thing that at least we at Muqam face is that it is very difficult to have someone commit that amount of time and be there as a constant. When you don't have a teacher who's constant with you online and the interactions are anyway very less, the children feel very lost. So you need to have at least that 1 or 2 anchored constant people, and then have the volunteers, helping them a little bit here and there. So we started using a lot of our volunteers to do either workshops or one-time things, and then build resources and things, rather than having them constantly on a day-to-day with the children. Because especially in these times when the children are also feeling a big lack in emotional support themselves, and they are reaching out to say that, Miss, we are missing. They actually call us, send us voice notes. It's really overwhelming and emotional for us also. But there'll be one who call like, Miss, मेरे यहाँ पे तो internet ही नहीं है, मुझे आपकी बहुत याद आती है, this that. So it's so nice to hear from them, and you see that they're missing that emotional quotient. And that time when you have a teacher who's there one day and then not there the other day, it kind of gives them a very big, it's like a jolt. So we've kind of shifted around even the roles that the volunteers play. So there's a lot of rebuilding around everything that we've been doing, at the crux of it and core of it, not losing the main, thought or the vision or the mission of it, and making sure we cover all of it is one of the main things that we worked with. I think it's mainly having the children also, again, like you said at the beginning, the children can also be a very unforgiving lot, So having a little bit of even levels within what the children have access to also help, because that way controlling a certain thing, having a voice which is above just the, teacher also kind of helped them realize where to value, where to respect, where to draw the line, because it's very easily, like Sushri said, the absolute privacy is absolutely gone for a toss. I have parents, teachers calling me in the middle of the night because that's when they got network, because all the extra busy time of internet stopped and suddenly they've got all these messages and they decide to upload stuff at that time. So all of that, and so then you have to maintain that boundary, wherein we told the parents that it's okay whenever you send the reply, but we've made it a pact within the teachers that nobody replies until 7 in the morning or 8 in the morning. Nobody responds to the teachers at 8 or after 8 or 9 in the night. kind of reconstructing those little boundaries so that your teachers also don't feel the burnout. So I think those kind of things become important. It's an organizational learning, and we have to remember that both parties are learning, and we have to keep adapting. So feedback is what we pretty much stuck to.
Okay, lovely. Thanks. Does anyone have any questions for our lovely panelists today? Aarti, did we get any questions in the chat box so far?
No, nothing as of now. I think everyone has answered the questions, like all the speakers have answered.
Yeah, it's been very, very detailed, and it's covered a lot.
Yeah.
So, someone. Any questions? You all can just unmute yourselves if you all have any. Otherwise, we can wrap up. I don't think anyone has questions. Nobody's typing it in the chat box, which means you all have covered. You have asked all the questions we have. Samyak, it just means that they've answered it really well. Because you could still have unanswered questions.
If you all have, if you all would like to share anything, you could also share your experiences. Or something that you all thought that something new that you all are doing in your organization or your NGO, you could also do that.
So Samyak says that you all have helped a lot, and it's been very good sharing, which has helped them a lot. Okay, lovely. I think we can wrap up now.
Yeah.
So I think it's been an absolute delight and an honor to have all of you all here. This webinar was simply heartwarming, and I've thoroughly enjoyed myself. It's also been extremely insightful to all the participants who will be implementing the thoughts that you all have shared. Unfortunately, I work with a not-for-profit that is not in the education space, but still I absolutely loved it. And all your students are extremely lucky to have each one of you all. So we look forward to doing more sessions with you all in the future. And we will be sharing a feedback form with the participants. The chat box. Aarti, has it gone out?
Yes,
Yeah.
it has.
So please do fill in the feedback and get back to us. And hope to see you all soon. Stay safe, take care, and have a lovely weekend.
Oh, also we have another webinar coming up next week on FCRA. I'll be sharing the RSVP form link in the chat section. On 7th of October.
Bansi, I can share Sunayana's contact details with you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kritika. Thank you, Samya, Akshay, and Bansi. A pleasure to be with you guys.
Absolutely agree. I think this is one of those rare webinars where we did have questions coming back.
Because you'll have covered everything, you'll have touched base upon everything.
All the possible questions that they had.
Yeah, it's been nice. It's been lovely. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be a part of this webinar.
Likewise. We'll be uploading this recording on YouTube if it's okay with y'all, and then y'all can circulate it amongst your team members as well.
Sure.
Most definitely.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Thanks.